Welcome back to my channel. I'm Traben, and in this video we're going to be looking at my March Madness reads, the books that my wife picked for my TBR for March. But actually, there's some more I gotta put on here. So I read these.
Gosh.
And these as well.
Oh no!
All right, let's talk about it.
That's your intro.
That's my intro? Is that what it sounds like? Is that my voice? Is that my voice?
My voice?
For the month of March, we both selected each other's TBRs.
March Madness.
Yeah. So 3 books, 3 graphic novels, and 3 manga that we wanted the other to read for various reasons. Sometimes it was something we were really into and wanted to introduce the other one to. Sometimes it was just something that, like, we just wanted to have the other person suffer through.
Suffer is an awfully rude word. Like, none of the things we picked were things we didn't think the other would tolerate.
No, but I do feel like some choices were made, like, specifically with the person in mind and, like, their tastes and things that we thought they would genuinely enjoy, and some were made more for us, and, like, I want someone else to read this and I want someone else to experience this to talk about it. So yes, I read through the 9 books selected, and then
as I predicted,
and then for 2 of the series I then went on to read everything that has been released for them. So,
which could have been worse. There were at least 2 other series you did not.
Yeah.
3. There were at least 3 other series I can think of.
Yeah.
That we possess more of that you did not blow your way through.
I also have my reading journal with me today because I did do 1-sentence kind of reviews of each book to kind of help me remember what my thoughts were as I finished them. Because
you blew through, like, a lot of these in the early half of March.
Yes.
So it's been a minute since you read a good number of these.
Yes. So I will be sharing those as well, my 1-sentence thoughts on the books. We'll start with books, and then manga,
yes,
and then graphic novels.
Yes.
All right, and we'll start with, not the first one I read, but we'll start with this one.
Oh, okay.
Before the Coffee Gets Cold, which is a novella with 3 parts. So there are 4.
I thought it was 4, but...
Yeah, it is 4. So 4 shorter stories in here. It's not a short story collection because they're all part of the same narrative.
Yeah, they're all interconnected to tell one story.
But it is, like, collectively, I think, under 200 pages or just about there. So
and it's a mini book. It's very small.
It was a quick read. This one, I believe I ended up giving 4 stars. It started off as a 3. I felt like the first couple of stories were really weak.
You were really down on it at first. I was quite worried.
And it was a lot of establishing the rules. So if you don't know, this is a series of 4 books at this point, 5?
I think it's at 5.
Okay. Where there is a coffee shop, and you can go back in time if you sit in this one particular spot, and you can only go back as long as your coffee remains hot. So once the coffee gets cold, there are dire consequences if you keep staying.
And you can only go back to that exact spot in the cafe.
Yeah, and you can't get up from the seat. So there's a whole bunch of rules.
There's a lot of rules.
Is what I'm trying to emphasize here. So the first story just has to basically be more of an info dump than an actual, like, satisfying story, in my opinion. There wasn't a lot of...
It just has a lot of ground to cover.
Yeah, but there wasn't a lot of emotional weight in it, and I also felt like I can't pin down if this is a problem of this particular translation or a problem of my distaste for some, like, Japanese writing tendencies, but there's a lot more of, like, telling in the sense of, like, paragraphs of, like, people walking around and, like, being contemplative and the looks on their faces, and a lot less dialogue, despite there being, like, very many characters. There were lots of moments where it would kind of fall into a description of what happened previously in these people's lives that got them to this point, and it was done in such a way that it felt like disconnected from everything else that was going on.
Interesting.
So again,
disagree.
This is, well, it's a personal thing, and I'm sure there are people who love it, but I did not care for it, and especially with anything that didn't have the emotional weight behind it. Those kind of asides don't draw me in as much, which is what the problem with like stories 1 and 2 were. By the time we got to story 3, we were dealing with characters that we had already established, with relationships that we had already touched on, and so those did have more of the weight, and the things they were doing with talking about their past were things that we were already familiar with, so it felt less it felt more motivated. I might continue this series, but it's not high on my priority list. They are pretty short. I think I read it in 2 days, and I wasn't dedicating a whole lot of time to it. So.
I read the first 2 books. We have the first 3. I'm pretty sure there's 2 more because there's a green one and a pink one. I'm pretty sure. Mm-hmm. And we don't have. I'm looking at them right now, and we do not have a green or pink one. But I really like this one. I think they have to go into a lot of the specifics because the rules are so limiting. Mm-hmm. Like you have to have a very specific set of circumstances to even want to use the time travel here. Because for most people, it would be completely useless. You wouldn't be able to achieve anything that you wanted. You wouldn't be able to have any kind of interactions that you wanted. You can only go back to this same cafe. So you have to really... There has to be a good reason why you want to go back to that cafe. So they have to do a lot of background work to explain how you get there to having this person wanting to go back. Mm-hmm. And sometimes that's like the majority of the story is what's happened up to that point, and then the conclusion is them going back and getting that resolution.
Yeah. For my 1-sentence summary of this, I wrote progressively better stories in a writing style I didn't care for.
Ouch.
So that
still gave it 4 stars though.
Yeah, because I do feel like the later stories were very good, and ultimately they're short, so I can't get like too angry about it. Like the writing's not bad. It's just a style that that's not working for me. But if your story's less than 100 pages, like 60 pages, I can move through that when there's other engaging things are drawing me in emotionally. So yeah, ultimately 4. Like really a 3-5, but I'm around up. Next book is How to Become the Dark Lord and Die Trying. So this was this is an isekai inspired story where you have a character who every time they die, they get reset to this same position. It feels very video game-esque, and has kind of, I would say, like soft lit RPG elements to it.
It definitely feels like some influence from the genre, if not. It's definitely not in that genre.
Yeah.
But it definitely is adjacent to, I would say. Because
she's not talking about like stats and things, but she does talk about like her noodle arms and how she has to train back up to like her to be fighting fit.
But by this point in the book, she knows like a training regimen that she can do to like get herself in shape. So she has like optimized getting in shape, but it isn't in terms of like spending skill points or classes. It's just, I've done this a lot and I know what I need to do to be strong enough to do the things I know how to do.
So yeah, she's been stuck in this loop for hundreds of lives.
Like 1,000 years.
And she finally decides to try to do something different because obviously what she's been trying has not worked. Every life ends with somebody getting crowned the Dark Lord and sweeping across the land and killing and torturing everybody.
Taking over the kingdom.
Yeah, and so she's decided that in this life,
as a one-off,
or this like cycle, she's going to try to become the Dark Lord herself. And so it is her progression to try to get there. There's a lot of mystery here because where she comes from and her life before this are all so far away. They're so long ago that she can't quite remember who she was or what her life was like before she got stuck here.
She describes it as like, do you remember being a baby? Because she's been doing this for 1,000 years, so her life before she was doing this is so far removed from her present life, it's like remembering when you were an infant.
Yeah. So, had this not had the ending it does, had it not done some of the more interesting things toward the end of the novel, it probably would have been at a 3.
Ooh, interesting.
It's good. I do find the main character rather crass. I think that it's not going to appeal to everyone.
Oh no, this is a book. Read sample chapters. If you're interested in this one, I would definitely say read sample chapters to find out if this is going to work for you.
Yeah. And so that combined with some other elements, but generally, like I liked the idea, and the story was fun, and it was very much like a quest type of adventure, only for someone who is trying to ascend to like the head bad guy status, but is not wanting to behave that way. Like her moral compass is generally for good.
Yeah.
She doesn't want to belittle her underlings. She wants to like build people up. She wants to be positive. But like I said, I think the ending in particular, or toward the ending in particular, there are some moments where there is some actual reflection on things that have happened before.
Okay, now I know what you're talking about.
And there is a bit of a change in the way the world works that I felt was really helpful in pushing this book past just a straightforward follow the villain kind of story. So for this one, I wrote definitely not for everybody, but for me. So,
yeah. So you liked it?
I liked it. Yeah, I liked it quite a bit. Like I said, I think it would have been a 3 either way. But I think that because of the changes at the end, the developments toward the end of the book, it definitely pushed it to a higher level. It definitely improved as it went on.
So it also ended up a 4.
Yes, it also ended up a 4.
So that one is the first part of a duology. Are you intending to pick up the second one that comes out later this year?
I mean, you're going to anyway.
I'm definitely going to.
But yes, I will. I do intend on reading it.
Okay.
There's another one as well that I want to read. That's another like isekai villainous story, but I can't remember what it's called. Every time I try to think of it, I think of Let Her Be Evil, which is the comic book anthology of evil women.
I know this is a very common manhwa. Like there's a lot of villainous manhwas out there of like people who've been brought back as the villain and like now they're trying to change the story.
Yeah.
It's like a very common trope.
Number 3 is going to be Anxious People by Frederick Bachman. I already did a review for this, which was only 10 minutes because I didn't want to spoil the ending.
I don't want to spoil anything.
Yeah. This is currently in the running for my book of the year. I gave it 5 stars. I really liked it. It has a narrative voice that I feel is very unique and very playful. It talks about how the story is mostly about idiots. So this is about a bank robbery that's not really a bank robbery, that leads to a hostage situation that doesn't really work like a hostage situation. A lot of the people in here are confused and scared and worried. There's a lot of interplay between characters. I feel like it's very character driven. It has a remarkable amount of depth to the characters, and I enjoyed seeing how they all played off each other. And it ends in a way where the stories all intertwine and conclude in a very satisfying way that I feel is very impressive given the number of characters we're having to juggle and the number of storylines we're having to progress. Because all of these characters, like 8 or 9 of them, all get arcs throughout the story.
And this was kind of the book that made me do the March Madness prompt. This was the one I have kept thinking that I keep bringing up every now and then, like, oh, you really need to read Anxious People. Oh, you really need to read Anxious People. And just it just hasn't been near the top. And this was one I really wanted you to read because I enjoyed it so much. And so I was really excited to force you to read it.
We also watched the series on Netflix.
Do not watch the series if you are planning on reading the book. Do that first.
Yeah.
I think it is a good adaptation, but you should read the book first.
Yeah. It cuts out some character plot, and like I said, the strength of this book I really do feel is the depth of character and the interactions between them, which the series manages to capture to a lesser degree. Like, the same relationships that they form exist there, but they're not as well...
Not as fully developed.
They're not as fully developed because you don't have the narrator, and
Yeah.
you don't have all these flashbacks. There's a bunch of characters, like ancillary characters, like background characters that are cut, and that really is a detriment to characterization. In particular, like my favorite character, she has a whole other thing that happens in the book that I think is very important in understanding her mindset, and the way they try to change it to accommodate for the
limited,
the more limited runtime
and the limited scope without the internal thoughts
was fine.
It did a good job, but this is much better.
But this is better.
When I finished this book and found out there was an adaptation, my first thought was, how on earth? Because there are certain things that I can't talk about that this book does really well that are dependent on it being a book. And when I heard there was an adaptation, I was like, but it can't do the same things that it did.
No.
And it tries and succeeds to a degree.
Yeah, and even the way in which the series is constructed, I think shows that the most surprising moment of the book is does not have the same impact on film.
It doesn't have the weight.
Because that was not the stinger for the episode, which you would think like your biggest
And they have to cut
moment.
a lot of things out to avoid.
Yeah.
Yeah. So read the book.
Read the book first.
I do recommend
and
the
then
series if you've
watch
read the
series.
book. It's decent. It's worth a watch, but the book is definitely worth a read. I really liked it. I'm so glad you liked it.
So I wrote the writing style and characters may be divisive based on some of the things I read online, but probably book of the year so far. I mean, it's early, but
Did people just feel they were unlikable, or
unlikable? The humor didn't work for them. They don't like that narrator. That's kind of its own voice.
It's humor, so it's going to be hit and miss. But
Yeah.
I don't feel like this one's quite as hit and miss as Dark Lord, though.
No,
But I love a narrator that is also a character. Do you think the series would have been better if it had had a voiceover narration?
No.
Or do you think that would have made it too campy?
No, that would have. It would have. I feel like that's something that's really difficult to do well outside of genres where it's a convention,
Like noir mysteries, yeah. Where you have that grizzled detective who you get all his thoughts because he's a man of few words.
Yeah, like you just be asking yourself. I think a straight drama, a drama comedy dramedy like this, I think that you would be asking yourself, like, who is this person and when are they going to show up, that kind of thing.
Because the one show I can think of that does have that narrator voice is Desperate Housewives. But you find out, like, very early on in the show that narrator, maybe it's not, maybe it's the end of the first season, where you find out who that narrator is. I can't quite remember when you find that out, but the narrator is a character from the past. They're dead. And so now they're narrating, I believe.
Yeah, I just feel like that would be the problem there, or it would feel
be too
like
disjointed.
noir. Yeah,
But I really like characters with characters. I really like books with a voicey narrator, where the narrator is kind of its own character. I found that I really like books like that. So.
yeah. Moving on to manga. So first one we'll talk about is Given. Given is about a couple of boys in, I guess they're high school.
They're in high school.
And one's in a band and one has a guitar, and they kind of... In disrepair, and they kind of start up what's currently like a friendship, and is obviously going to move into a romance.
At the end of this one is when Uenoyama realizes he's starting to fall for him.
Yeah. So this was a 3-star.
So sad.
But it's one of those things you talk about often with manga and how it's difficult to rate them
That's
as
true.
you get further into them.
That's true.
I don't think this did enough. I think it was trying to do the slow burn romance kind of thing, but as a result, I didn't really get a feel for a lot of character in here, not a lot of like the relationship moves forward very slow, and we also have to talk about the other members of the band because their relationship is obviously going to come up later.
They've got some drama, yeah.
And so you're juggling 4 characters, and you've decided I'm going to roll this out slow.
Mm-hmm.
The first volume didn't do much.
It is a slow burn, which I
So-
like because it's a little more realistic.
Yeah, I mean that's fair, and I do feel like it's mostly grounded in like there's no fantastical elements in here. I feel like this is weakened because the focus is on music, and so like when he's like, oh, I'm gonna sing a song, and it's just like a shot of him with his mouth open and you know notes going by, and then the next thing is like them talking about it afterwards. I thought it didn't work for me.
I did feel like this one was made with becoming an anime in mind, because of moments like that where it's like this is clearly made to be represented visually, like with in an anime or in a movie. This is clearly made so that when he sings, you get the actual this guy can sing moment that you can't really capture other than just getting Uenoyama's response and like him going like, oh man.
Yeah.
I definitely feel this one was made, and I wonder how many mangas are these days written hoping that they'll get an anime adaptation, which is maybe the medium they more had in mind.
Okay.
Maybe they think, oh, that's probably a better medium for my story, but manga is where you start a lot of the time.
Yeah. So like I said, 3 stars, fine. It was okay. I don't know if I'm going to continue reading this one.
Stabs to the heart.
I've got other things I want to read more.
Because we own all of this one.
Yeah. But I don't know. Maybe I'll pick it up sometime in the future.
Did you have any like similarities to like it gets compared to Heartstopper a lot?
Okay. I mean, that's fair. I mean, it's like Heartstopper in the fact that it's a teen romance between 2 boys, but like beyond that, there's really not a lot.
Well, and also you have at least one boy who has never been in a relationship with another boy.
Okay.
Who is kind of developing his sense of who he is and who he's attracted to.
Okay. Yeah, I guess, but like I don't know. I feel like Heartstopper has more room. First of all, by the end of Heartstopper Volume 1, I had more of a sense of the characters. They weren't. This is teasing out a lot of like mysterious backstory stuff, but it's not like telling you about it. I had a much clearer sense of who the characters were in Heartstopper much faster, and I felt more for the struggle that they were going through. The one who had not been in a relationship, it's Charlie and Nick. So Nick, who had not been in a relationship with a guy before, I felt a lot more of his like struggle and his trepidation and his stress over that than I did with this one.
Well, because this one ends with him literally going, I think I have feelings for this guy. Like, that's literally the moment it ends, so you don't really have a lot of time for that struggle.
Again, yeah, but like, yeah. But that's why. Like, okay. I feel like the characterization in Heartstoppers, at least, you know, within a given volume is
a
more
given
than this.
Volume?
Moving on. So on this one I wrote, hard to tell from first volume, but this was not working for me. Yeah. Yeah. The next one we'll talk about is Cat Gamer. It is Cat Gamer, right? And not like Cat Plus Gamer?
I don't know.
All right. I'm going to need you to hold
I call it Cat Gamer, but it could be Cat Plus Gamer. It is difficult to know what the actual, like, is it Spy X Family? Like,
yeah. I've read all Cat Gamers, all the Cat Gamers that exist stateside.
You've now read more Cat Gamer than me because
yes.
I still haven't read 7.
Yes. So I can talk about this as more of a series.
You can.
And these fluctuate between a 4 and a 5, depending on the particular focus of a volume. And they're like one-off stories. So like it's just like, are these things going to hit for me? Are they talking about gaming concepts that I relate to? And like the characters also matter quite a bit.
Which is so funny because I seem to remember the one-off stories being something you didn't like about Wotakoi.
Yeah, that's true, and I am going to talk about that with Wotakoi.
So it's interesting that this one like is part of the like draw.
But I mean, it's not a draw. I'm saying it's value. It's the things, the given volume. If it is a 4 or a 5 depends on what do the individual stories talk about.
What would you give the 7 volumes you've read as a series so far? What would you give the series? A 4 or a 5?
I don't know. It's a tough call. I'd probably give it 5. I had a lot of fun with it. I laugh quite frequently reading these. And I think that's really, at the end of the day, like what you want from this kind of comic. We're not talking about Wotakoi yet, but yes, that one of my complaints with Wotakoi is that there's no like overarching connective tissue between the stories. But I feel like you need that in a relationship manga to like see the progression of the relationship and to get stories that are like to get the sense that something is moving forward. This is just about cats and like, you know,
in video games.
And she gets bigger cat toys and she gets a cat tree, but like, okay, like it's just like, so generally how
there are relationships.
There are, yeah. So generally, how a given how
should we talk about what it's about?
Sure. I mean, so this is a story about a woman who is very serious with her work, and she always leaves right on time, which is kind of a unusual thing. Having worked in Japan and in a Japanese workspace, I think that leaving right on time is an unusual thing.
Well, I think with her job especially, and most office jobs, the idea is you have a set amount of work, and you are staying until that amount of work is done.
Right.
So if you are very efficient and you get all your work done, there's no reason you can't leave on time. No one will raise an eyebrow. No one seems upset that she leaves on time because they think they're like, whoa, she's so efficient. Whereas a lot of her coworkers have to stay late because they're not able to get through all their tasks in one day.
Yeah, so she leaves on time and
doesn't socialize.
Yeah, and everyone thinks she's like so serious, but the reason why she's doing it is because she's like a hardcore gamer, and when work's done, she gets to go home and play her video games and stay up until like a particular time. She's very disciplined and organized.
She does not want things to cut into her video game time.
Yeah, but it's very important that she has that. And then early on in Volume 1, one of her coworkers comes in with a cat in a box they found outside that someone abandoned, I assume.
He got lost, remember?
And they're like, oh, do you want this cat? And just like, inexplicably, she's like, I'll take it.
She's like, yeah, I want that cat, actually.
And so
she has never raised a pet before.
Yeah.
She has no experience with pets.
So the breakdown of a given chapter is usually like some game concept explained to you and the current like struggle she's going through with her gaming life, and then some cute cat thing and how those two things come together. For example, there's one about the greed sensor, that when you have random loot boxes and like you want the thing, the game can sense that,
and it's not going to
give it to you. And then she puts in little like extra cat treats,
those treats into
the automatic food dispenser. And so then, like, how many treats are in there becomes...
Or like the lucky pulls.
Yeah, it becomes a parallel with the idea of lucky pulls. And it's the cat that just doesn't care whether they're getting the treats or not that gets the one that has all of them. Because the other cat gets so upset about having, like, 3 or 4 rounds of just regular cat food. So it's, I don't know, it's stuff like that.
Another one talks about how her cat gets fleas And she's like, he has a status condition. What do I need to alleviate the status condition on my cat? Because she's looking at everything through like leveling up and video game mechanics, because that's what she's used to. And so she is looking at it through that lens, and it's all very funny.
And eventually second cat. And then we can talk about like parties and like
second cat.
Which one of them is the tank and which one's the ranger or whatever class.
And they are very different cats.
They're very different cats, both like in like body shape and also like personality, which was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So no, this one's just fun and cute, and it doesn't need any overarching story. Their cats are getting bigger. That's like about the only thing that needs to happen.
She is a good pet owner. That is all you need to know. She is not like failing and hurting her animals. You are not watching her put these animals in danger at any point. She is a good cat owner who is figuring it out as she goes, and it's very wholesome and sweet. Yeah. I'm glad you liked this one.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
I figured you would. This was another one I've been bugging you about, where I'm like, you should read this. You'll like it. There's no reason you won't like it. Mm-hmm. And so I was glad that I was right, and you did like it. What did you write down for that one?
All right. Cat Gamer, I said always cute, but some volumes hit better than others.
That's fair.
Yeah. Next one up is Wotakoi. This is volume 3.
Yes.
Which is like the Japanese. This is one of the ones that like doubles up. So it's really the Japanese, like at this point, 5 and 6. And it's like every other Wotakoi volume. It was 4 stars. I've talked about Wotakoi in the past. Wotakoi consistently gets 4. The relationships are good. The jokes are generally funny. I just don't feel like the progression is there. It's better than it was in the early volumes. Because in the early volumes, I felt like they were mixing the main comic and these 4-coma comics.
And I think that has to do with how it was published.
Yeah. So yeah, it's still cute. But like when I look back at Wotakoi as a whole, I get a sense of like some bit of progression of their relationships and things, but like I couldn't tell you about like specific events in this one beyond I remember there was a bit where one of the characters couldn't remember 2 of their coworkers' names, and there was stuff about going to like a work party. But it doesn't stick with me.
It's so interesting because this is, the more I think about it, this is like right parallel with Cat Gamer in so many ways. Mm-hmm. They're both about nerd culture and nerdy things. Mm-hmm. They're both often very like single joke issue one-shot stories. Mm-hmm. And so they're very similar.
Yeah.
But this one doesn't work for you the same way.
No, it doesn't work for me quite as well. And
but you do like it.
I do like it, and I still want to finish it. I'm just, like 4 stars. It's great.
Okay.
And I still want to finish the series. I've got 2 more.
You're over halfway there, and the 5th one's tiny.
Yeah. But yeah, it's not something like when I'm reading it, I'm having fun. And I'm enjoying the stories, and like it does get a couple of chuckles out of me. But then when I'm done, I'm not like, oh god, I got to pick up the next issue and see what happens. Where with Cat Gamer, I did do that because I was having so much fun with it, and I wanted to see the ridiculous cat antics.
And I picked this one because you read 1 and 2 in your manga tournament last year, mm-hmm. and then never picked it up again.
Yeah.
So when I was looking at manga that you hadn't read, mm-hmm. I was like, oh well, he should get back to Wotakoi.
Yeah.
Like that's a series he started and hasn't picked up again. I'm gonna force him to continue it.
Yeah, and like I said, I will finish this one up for sure. It's just not one that feels like a must read after you finish a volume. And I think that's partially because there isn't any hint or any idea of like what is at stake or what's going to happen next or anything like that.
Well, it's very character driven as opposed to plot driven.
Yeah, and I guess that's true of Cat Gamer as well.
It
but
is.
Like the thing about Cat Gamer is like I don't feel like I have to be invested in a good cat owner's like I'm not like on the edge of my seat like, oh, are the cats going to get taken away, or like there's no drama to it. It's just like funny stories. There should be some there should be some drama to a relationship.
I mean,
There should be some.
should there be?
I mean,
should we have more drama in our relationship?
We have plenty of drama with our relationship.
Should there be more drama?
We have 2 kids.
I mean, that's not the same thing. For me, I kind of like having a romance where it isn't constantly like the misunderstanding that breaks them up and the things that are going to ruin the relationship and will they stay together. I found it really refreshing having a romance manga about them all having a very nice time together.
Yeah, I guess it's fair, but like, again, it's fine, but there's no pull to read the next one
Because you love the characters.
Yeah,
I love the characters.
That might be the issue. Is maybe I don't love the characters as much as I love them cats.
I mean, that's fair. The cats are adorable.
Yeah, but again, still 4 stars, still good.
Okay,
like still very good. So for Wotakoi, some cute nerd love with no connection between stories. Next up, we have the Moth Keeper. This one I think ended up being 3. Why audible gasp?
Because I want everything to be a 5-star.
Yeah, so this one, we have another one from the same author, right?
Yes.
That's coming up. But this one is a story about a girl who lives in a society that has chosen to
forsake the sun.
Yeah, to live their lives during the night in recognition of like a moon.
The moon spirit. Yeah.
I was going to say goddess, but no, moon spirit. And they're gifted these moths, and one person has to be the Moth Keeper, which seems like a very lonely job.
That's the point, yeah.
Yeah, and so the person who is going to take on that role is a young girl who is struggling a bit with identity and struggling a bit with, is this really what she wants? She wants to be useful. She wants to do something for her tribe and for her people, but she's unsure if this is what she wants, and it's a lot of the exploration of those feelings.
She's unsure where she fits.
I felt like this one was one of those that it's one of those cozy fantasy stories where there's a lot of like breathing room. There's a lot of very beautiful art. There's a lot of panels of just like vibes and feelings.
You would call this cozy?
I mean, mostly, yeah.
Even though, like, at one point, like the fate of the entire village is at stake.
People have different thresholds for what they consider like cozy fantasy.
That just seemed like it was above your threshold for cozy, I thought.
Yeah, so I don't know. This one's just it I don't know what it is about it, but didn't grab me as much as I imagine you hoped it would. I didn't feel that connected to the characters.
Ouch.
So for me, this was just a little bit too slow. The art was very pretty. The story had some poignant moments, especially toward the end. But it's also, I would argue, is this middle grade? Is
yes,
this young adult?
I would guess this is middle grade.
Is also, so that also plays some role in it. Like I've read middle grade that I've enjoyed before. There's several middle grade stories I do like, but this one just something about it just didn't quite work for me, and I can't quite articulate why. But it's somewhat like what was the City of Secrets,
City of Illusions.
City of Illusions. Those books were just a little bit too simplistic and straightforward.
I agree with that. Those were not as good as this. This was better.
Okay, yeah, it was better, but it wasn't like it wasn't like.
Because I gave the City books 3 stars, and I think I gave this 5 stars. I really liked this one.
I gave the City of Secrets. I was 2 or 3.
2? Ouch.
Yeah.
I don't think you gave it a 2.
You don't think so? I'll go back and look.
I
Like, if you enjoy, I would say, like, the Ghibli aesthetic.
Mm-hmm. This one does feel very Ghibli adjacent.
Yeah, with a more straightforward plot, storytelling wise, I'd say that's about where this is at.
Okay.
I wrote down genuinely a hauntingly beautiful book.
No, did you mean that, like, genuinely or sarcastically?
I said genuinely. I meant genuinely.
Yeah, but Brandon says truly it's a hauntingly beautiful melody, so I don't know whether to take you seriously or not. It was genuine. You did feel it was a beautiful story.
I did.
We were talking about Burger Dog, for anyone.
Don't say
Look it up.
Don't say those words.
Look it up.
Next up, we have Nightwing Leaping into the Light, which is the first in the modern...
First in Tom Taylor's run.
Tom Taylor's run, sure. Like the
Because it's over now. There's a new one.
Of course there is. So this is mainstream DC comic continuity.
Okay, I have to know. What star rating did you give?
I gave this one 5 stars.
Yay!
So this is with the caveat that it is a like a mainstream comic. I feel like for that subsection of...
We're at an asterisk here. It can't just be a 5-star. It's got to be a 5-star asterisk. It's good for a comic.
Yeah. Well, it's
good for a mainstream comic, I guess.
Yeah. So I feel like between the art direction in here, there are some really interesting uses of space.
Emotion.
Emotion.
I really like the art.
And like
Bruno Redondo.
Using like shadow characters to show,
like after images.
Yes, yeah. To show like movement across a scene. Between that, a story that I felt like did have some interesting things to say about the character, even though they had to kind of invent a new backstory. We had to retcon something but that's comics.
And we can talk about this a little bit now that you've read it. When I found out, spoiler, I guess, if you care about mainstream Nightwing and somehow don't know this spoiler so far, I knew before reading it that they were giving him a sister, and I was vehemently upset by that news.
You think you'd learned your lesson?
I did not.
You think you'd learn?
You think I'd learn? I mean, but a lot of times it is bad. You've got to admit, a lot of times decisions are bad.
Okay, so it's not cool when I say for a mainstream comic, but when you're like, oh, a lot of time mainstream.
No, a lot of time retcon decisions are messy and bad.
Where do you have retcon decisions?
What?
Where do you have retcon decisions? You have retcon decisions
in mainstream comics. That's not. Just let me talk.
Go for it.
So when I found out that they were giving him a sister, I was very against the idea, mostly because I thought it would lead to cheating. Mostly because I thought the only way they could do that is to be like, oh, well, his dad had an affair, and so that's how you have a sister. And I was like, that is really changing the character of his parents. Okay. And that's a big change.
Did we know a lot about his parents before this?
We knew that they were decent people.
Okay.
Like, he wasn't a baby when his kids died. He was a kid, and like the circus people all talked to Dick about his family. Okay. Like, his parents were just like Bruce's parents, I'm pretty sure, are mostly just usually portrayed as genuinely good people. And that would be a big change. Okay. And I did not know how I would like it, but they handled it about as well as you could have done while still introducing that plot line. I'm still not sure I like him having this new sibling in terms of just like introducing that character. I'm still not sure how I feel about that being a decision that was made, but it was handled in a much better way than I was worried it would be.
Yeah, and I feel like the characterization is, again, another highlight for me was the characterization. I'm familiar with a number of Bat Family characters via you, and so just seeing them play off of each other and seeing them interact in ways that I felt were believable and consistent with what I know about them was good to see.
And that's one thing I feel that's really important about a good Nightwing story is Nightwing isn't like Batman where he pretends that he is a singular force and doesn't have any allies, despite the fact that the Bat Family is huge and Batman is constantly surrounded by allies. Nightwing isn't that. Nightwing is defined by his relations to people, by his teams and the way he works with people and the relationships he has with others. And I feel like the best Nightwing stories introduce those aspects of the people he cares about and the people who care about him, and that he isn't necessarily always afraid to ask for help, that he will lean on people and people are asking him for help. And I like it when they do that. I like when they are actually when they're not isolated in their tiny bubble and they actually are part of the larger universe. I like that a lot. Yeah. And I feel like that's really important to Dick's character.
Yeah. So yeah, I liked it.
I'm so glad you liked it. Will you continue?
I don't know.
But you liked it!
Yeah, even though I liked it and I gave it 5 stars, there's just so much else that I'm reading comic-wise that I don't know. I'll probably get back to it. But at the moment, there's other things.
But you liked it!
I did like it.
And the run is over. I am not caught up. I am fairly far behind, actually, but the run is over now. So there's a new creative team.
Okay, so what does this say here? I don't know. Okay, so I wrote nice style and engaging story despite comic book contrivances.
Also, he has a 3-legged dog named Haley, and she's the best.
Oh my god, yeah, he gets this dog, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I'm taking that thing back. Oh,
I'm taking it to the shelter tomorrow."
To the shelter, and she's like,
It's in your house. That's your dog now.
That's what's gonna happen. So
her name is Haley, also known as Bitewing, and she is the best.
Okay.
What?
Bitewing. Yes. The last one is another one from the same author as
the Moth Keeper.
Moth Keeper, and that is the trilogy of the T-Dragon Society, which will go down as the first book that I played the board game of first before I read the book. So these are like these really nice oversized copies of a story about dragons that also make tea. Well,
they don't make the tea.
Well, they make tea leaves.
They grow tea
They
leaves.
grow tea leaves.
Yeah, that's true.
And then you can make tea out of it, and when you drink the tea, it gives you memories. And so this one was 3-star, 3-star, 4-star for me.
Okay. That checks out.
Yeah, so much like the Moth Keeper, like in keeping with this author's kind of style, I feel like there is a lot of very beautiful art, a lot of those like contemplative moments and like beautiful scenes, rather sparse dialogue, and with the first and second volumes, there is more of what I saw in Before the Coffee Gets Cold, of like developing these characters and like introing them and kind of giving you a sense of who they are. And it was built up for the last volume, which gives a pretty satisfying arc to the characters.
Yeah.
So that's why that one was stronger for me, because it was doing satisfying things with more than like 1 or 2 characters.
This is definitely the strongest volume, but you cannot skip to this one, because this one only works because it builds on what came in the previous 2.
That's true.
So this one is the best one, but it won't ring as true. It won't have as satisfying as feelings if you haven't read everything before it.
So like the first volume is really primarily one character story, and the second volume does the same thing. It has a one-off story of a couple of other characters that gives them a little extra like backstory and a little bit more development. But then the last book does follow multiple characters. You get a sense of the like where all these characters end up and what they're striving for, and I just felt like it was a stronger book than the first 2. And honestly, like, I don't have a whole lot to say about them because, like I said, the dialogue is very sparse. They are very quick reads. The most like the densest material is in the back, where you get the like profiles of all the different tea dragons, which I also read for the lore.
I want a peppermint dragon. And a marshmallow dragon.
Yeah, but I would definitely, again, this is like the Ghibli vibes. If you like that kind of whimsical nature, and you want something that is pretty straightforward stories, but they're very imaginative in the world building.
Min's is a little less straightforward. I'd say Min has the most complicated story in terms of like, because it's all internal.
Yeah.
And I give all of these 5 stars. I love the art. I like when there's not a lot of dialogue.
Okay.
One thing I really like in a graphic novel or a manga is when they can tell parts of the story, not like the whole thing necessarily, although I do have a number of those, but when they can tell certain elements of the story without any dialogue. And when you can do that very effectively, that really works for me. Okay. And that's something I feel Kay O'Neill really, really, really excels at. I really think she does a great job with expression and showing certain progressions, and I really like the art.
So, yeah, they were, like I said, they were cute. Didn't move me emotionally like some other stories.
Eisner Award winner, just like Do a Powerbomb, Eric.
Just like Do a Powerbomb. You put them next to each other, I wouldn't be able to tell the difference.
Yeah, I wouldn't be able to tell the difference. So where Do a Powerbomb emotionally resonated for you, this resonated for me.
I only wrote down the review for the first one, so it just says, sweet but little story to grab onto with the initial book.
Do you remember what the questions you asked me were?
I do. Do you want me to?
I do. Please give me all your questions so I may ask you them. What was the best book that I chose for you?
Anxious People.
Obviously.
Like, by a lot.
Yes. It's good to know that the book I had in mind for this entire project was, in fact, the best one of the ones I chose. That it was the one that deserved to be picked and everything else was just kind of also there.
Yeah.
Did you give anything else a 5-star? You gave Nightwing a 5-star?
I gave Nightwing 5 stars, and I gave certain volumes of Cat Gamer 5 stars.
And Cat Gamer, you said overall was a 5-star series. Was that it?
Yeah. Okay. That's it.
I think that was more 5 stars than I had. I think I only had 2.
I believe it was, yes.
But watch my video on my channel if you want to find out how that went. What was the worst thing you read?
Yeah. So.
Oh, how are you going to break my heart?
I'm going to go with Given, because when I'm thinking about when I'm thinking about the different stories and I'm thinking about the different books, like yes, Tea Dragon Society was also a 3, but I read the other 2 books
because I forced you to.
No, because you mentioned. Because
I strongly encouraged that it was worth reading them as a set.
Yeah, because you mentioned that that the final volume was more of a culmination, and maybe I would enjoy that more.
And I was right. Okay, I mean that checks out.
I would probably read another book set in like a Moth Keeper-esque setting, or like another tribe from that if she came out with something like that. But I'm just not. I'm not driven to read Given.
What was the sweetest or funniest moment?
Because
I feel like I gave you a lot of funny books.
Yeah, you gave me. You
laughed a lot while reading these books.
Yeah, so I would definitely say that Cat Gamer had the funniest bits. But
you read a lot of Cat Gamers. So.
Yeah, but I love when they have the story, and then you have the cat's perspective of the story, and
the last page of each chapter is the cat's interpretation of what's happening.
I feel like there's one where one of the cats like freezes, and they're like, "What was I doing?" And I think that was the thing I laughed the hardest at on anything that I read.
So cats were funnier than Anxious People?
Yeah, I would say the end of Anxious People probably has like the most poignant messages. And
is that like the sweetest moment you think was the end of Anxious People?
Yeah, probably I would say what was her name? Zara? I think it's Zara. I think Of all the characters I read across all these books, I think Zara's story is the one that I felt was the most like poignant, and the one that I really was like rooting for her and was happy to see the direction she was taking at the end of that book.
Saddest moment.
Saddest moment. Yes. So
That's impressive.
So obviously it was the moment that stood out to me the most because I immediately found the page and I immediately found the quote.
Like, I didn't think, wow, I'm impressed.
Okay, so this is probably the saddest line. It's gonna get me right now. She had learned to cry almost without tears now for practical reasons. It's just like, that hurts.
Yeah. Sadder than Before the Coffee Gets Cold?
I think so. I think The Coffee Gets Cold,
Which you complained was emotionally devastating you.
I think I think Before the Coffee Gets Cold, the problem with that, and the reason why it's not like, why I wouldn't rate it as sadder, is because it is like geared toward that. You are primed for that.
You are primed for emotion.
Like by the second story, you're like, okay,
this
all
is
of
what we're
these
doing.
are going to be sad.
This is what we're doing. Okay.
Yeah. And so, like, you're kind of like, I'm already kind of like on guard. A lot of the like poignant moments and the like lessons in Anxious People come out of like, haha, people are dumb, oh, jokes. And then they're like,
and then, like,
yeah.
they like zing you, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's why I think this hit me harder, because it was these moments between all this like ridiculousness and hilarity, and you'd get these really sad or poignant moments. We're gonna have to cut it off again.
Would you do this again?
Yeah. Not like next month, but I would do it again like later this year or next year I would do it.
Okay. And would you continue or read from the same author? We kind of touched on most of that.
Yeah, so like I would continue Nightwing eventually, but not right now. Frederick Bachman, I'm already looking at finding more from him.
I'd like to read more Bachman too.
Yeah, Given I'm not really planning on reading, and then the other ones I already have or are doing.
Would you read more Kay O'Neill?
Yeah, I'd read more Kay O'Neill.
Okay, because I will probably pick more up because I'm really impressed by the authors.
Yeah, I'll probably read more.
Okay.
So that's going to do it for us today. Please check out the accompanying video on Amanda's channel, Amanda Should Be Reading. As always, I hope your reading journey is going well. I hope you are finding books and having fun with your reads. And until the next one, take care.